dear colleagues, friends, audience. I'm delighted here to present to your site the most exciting topic, I would say. So actually, the rather very important topic, KPI for business analysis activities. So, and how those should be applied for our as business analysis job, working activities. So, before proceeding and giving the button to our speaker, Orest Tatomyr, I would like to highlight some ground rules in front and to your side. So first of all, session will be recorded. The second one, please put your questions on our chat and name on the question, because Orest, our speaker, after the our session, will name the person with for the best question. If you wanted to proceed with conversation with our speaker, so actually link to our platform will be added after the in the end of our session, and so actually you can find the link in description in agenda, and I will post as well. So and Orest, don't forget to highlight to announce the best person who deliver the best question to your side. So Orest, this is Orest Tatomyr, our business analysis manager working for EPAM. So very smart business analyst, and welcome to present your speech introduction and topic.
Hello, everybody. Hello, audience. Hello, Tanya. Thank you for such nice intro. It's really a pleasure for me to be here and to share with you some insights and knowledge on BA KPIs. And I would like to engage audience in active discussion. So please post your questions as we go. We will try to answer them after we cover main slides I prepared for today. So let's start then, and briefly about agenda for my talk for today. Let me switch to the next slide. So what I wanted to cover today is a little bit of introduction about myself, EPAM, and BA areas. What can be KPI areas for measurement, what KPI measures we can employ, common BA KPIs we can use in our projects, and how one can set up a BA KPIs in his project, and what to select and with what to start with in case you don't have KPIs. So one of the reasons for this talk emerged is that we all talk about how to be more effective, how to understand that you're doing the right thing at the right time. And when we talk about BA effectiveness, it's usually very, experience-driven, gut-driven, and there is not much KPIs employed in the field that we can reliably use in order to understand this is BA is doing a great job and this BA needs some improvements in his processes. There is some issues on the client side. So I wanted to cover these areas and show you how we can do that as a business analysis in projects. So briefly about myself, I'm today business analysis manager at the EPAM system, managing roughly 40 people across different projects. Some of my subordinates are key pillar people in key clients that EPAM is serving from Kyiv, Ukraine. I like to see how we grow as a community and how business analysis is growing and maturing and impacting overall industry. We see a growth of product management behind the business analysis, so it's all intertwined and influencing each other. So let's start my topic on KPIs with this smart quote by Peter Drucker, management expert. So if you can't measure something, you cannot manage it, and that's why key performance indicators comes into play as a method to measure whatever we want or we decided we need to measure. And then once we measure it, we can manage it by applying different procedures and processes. Why we need to measure something in business analysis work? Because we want to increase understanding of what we are doing and how we affect different processes of project delivery, to define areas where we can put some improvements and highlight that there's improvement is needed because we have some discrepancies with target state, And we'd like to make decisions in the right place and about right time. So a lot of people know that at the end of a project, somebody may say we had a bad requirements, but we know about this at the end of a project. Nobody was raising this during the project or in other phases. So that's why making right decision at right time is really valuable. And I will cover those KPIs that may help you in such situations. So let's get back to business analysis body of knowledge and how they define business analysis performance metrics and where they can be used. So first of all, we need to define performance objectives for our BAs or for our team or for our company and define the business analysis approach we follow. Based on those two inputs, we can define business analysis performance improvements points, and basically those items can be meta KPIs that we can derive the KPIs out of them. Once we build this framework of business analysis performance assessment, we can use it in different processes beneath, like in business analysis planning, stakeholder engagement, business analysis governance, managing stakeholder collaboration, or managing how we manage the requirements process and information management overall. People who pass CBAP fairly know this. People who thinking about the CBAP and BABOK overall, it's very valuable picture for you to understand and probably use as a meta thought why we need KPIs and where we can employ them. So what we want to measure for BAs. So it's really straightforward as in any work, but but BA has their own specifics. So let's start with efficiency. We would like to understand how long it takes requirements from inception to implementation, how much waste is produced during BA work, and how much improvements we produced during touching those requirements. Then we want to know our effectiveness, so how many defects and requirements artifacts are usually found. The less, the better. Best practices, so do we follow any best practices or company practices defined or industry practices defined? And then the last one measure is an impact, so how impactful BA is for the client. As probably you all know, BA work is really hard to measure and understand and explain sometimes. So it relies a lot on feedback. So there is positive feedback from the customer, number of change requests and requirements we get, quality problems in the implemented solution, and how much progress we made in project for actual delivery date versus requested and promised date. So those what to measure also can be transponded into measurement areas of financials, how BA can influence the project bottom line, and by reducing the scope, reducing the cost of the project, or increasing the cost of because of new requirements was found. How BA is engaging the customer and making it easier to understand the requirements we are gathering and how those requirements are put together. Also, there is an internal aspect to the BA work, especially at EPAM, where we have a lot of BAs doing the service. We need to understand those BAs are following the best standards. They have the templates available for them. They can execute what's expected in different stages of project, starting from discovery and ending with user acceptance testing and production deliveries. And then we have innovation measurement. So when we developed a new method, have we employed it? Have we told about that method to everybody around ourselves and moved company to the next stage and BA skill? So based on those two items, measurement areas and like how we measure BAs, I come up with ideas for BA KPIs in different areas. So let's start with internal ones for BA skills and knowledge development. There is a lot, and if you spend some time thinking about, okay, if I'm a BA and I need some KPIs for myself or my team, you can come up with ideas as well. But take it to the last slide where I will cover how to implement this in your team. So don't rush. So let's start with numbers of BA tools and techniques used. I think we know at least several books that outline like 90 plus techniques that can business analysts use in real life. However, from my experience and experience of my colleagues, we usually end up with three main techniques: is like building a stakeholder map by understanding who and where is in your project, conducting client interviews, developers interviews, and all other interviews to gather your requirements and validate them, and document analysis in order to be prepared to understand how far is your company or your client with understanding his given situation. There's also other tools, but I just highlighted the ones. If I want to employ this KPI, I come to the project and say, do you have stakeholder maps? Is there interviews conducted? Have you done document analysis? And those three answers will give me a state of where the BAs are and how well they understand their situation. Then we have measures to how successfully other tools and techniques used. For example, some clients like to be engaged in workshops, having like 10, 12 people with BA in one room and brainstorming like for several days. Others would like to have a questionnaire or semi-automated tools that gather major requirements and then validated them. It all depends from project to project, but you need to think in your given situation how you measure those tool success, right? And then there is other measures that can help you with. On the next slide, I will highlight this. The next item for BA skills is BA suggestion solutions. I don't know, I don't feel the audience right now, but I think on Q&A session we will get this. Some BAs may end up in a situation when they just copy paste whatever client is saying or whatever marketing bringing to them and saying to engineering team, this is what you need to deliver. I would say it's a basic BA process. However, when the BA has a lot of similar projects has been done and a lot of technical expertise, sometimes you became a consulting point both for the client and for the delivery team, and you can suggest solutions. And this moment is very crucial into the successful BA process when you propose solutions to your team or to your client and they accept it. And that means that you have a lot of trust with the client and your project will be more successful than not. Then the next metric derived from the below is the percentage of the accepted suggestions for improvements that the BA writes. So if you have like 10 out of 10, you're doing really great, or maybe you are the only person that can answer tough questions, so you need to think about engaging somebody else to have second opinions. Or if you have 1 out of 10, then it means there is a room for improvement for you as a BA in suggestion solutions to client or your team. Then we also have more like organizational metric, how BA are improving their skills. And it's really hard to measure that because you can improve your skills either by doing your job or by attending the training. And if you can measure the job on job, if you can, so KPI can help you with help you with on job measurements. How do we know that somebody learned some new skills? So usually we rely on one-to-ones with persons and seeing how they improve over the time, or we rely on certifications such as CBAP, IRAP certification, or ISPM, which means that person learned something and passes those certifications, so has some knowledge and can apply in real life settings. And then the next KPI is, does the BA apply lessons learned? So if you get some new knowledge or you have some tough delivery project and you've done something new, have you learned your lesson and do not repeat your mistakes the second time? Then the next one is number of reusable requirements logged in. I don't know, especially if you working in the same area doing, for example, front-end work with a lot of systems integration, you usually will bump up into similar like login issue or API integration. And I had such experience in my life when I was thinking, I wish I had those templates created rather than drafting from the scratch the same requirements I've already written for another project several times. And this can be also a time saver for you because you can reuse those requirements in the new project and save time on writing. Adaptability adaptivity with the organizational culture. It's also a measure for like EPAM internal, how BAs fits to EPAM culture. But I think in any other big organizations, there is also this measure to understand that those people are fitting to the culture and we like to work with them, or we need to improve their like understanding of the culture. And then last but not least, as KPI for BA organizational skills. So that depends really on person. Somebody is really well organized and well structured, and they put a lot of meetings up front. They prepare for them. They create agenda. They create meeting minutes. They follow up on those meeting minutes and try to push to the resolutions. Other people usually like to go with the flow and see how the situation develops. Both approaches are viable, but you need to have a healthy mix of that, and those KPIs help you to understands where you are in that mix. So number of meetings to number of conclusions and agreements made on the meetings. Again, if you have a lot, if you have this percentage really low or really high, you need to think why you don't get conclusions or why you having all meetings that are agreeable. Probably you have two senior people sitting and everybody is frightened to object, or maybe you have two junior people sitting in your room and nobody can agree on final conclusion without some higher supervision. Number of reviews and comments to number of stakeholders, of how engaging those meetings are and how your stakeholders are interested in your agendas. Number of rescheduled meetings. Reschedules happen, but if you keep rescheduling meetings with your stakeholders, you need to think about other strategies how to communicate with them. And percentage of deadlines met by stakeholders. So everybody knew, I think, was in situation when you ask for some clarification or for some documents for your client and they're not coming back to you, and it blocks, for example, a new sprint or new feature development, and the team is waiting. So it also produced a lot of blockage, and it also can highlight some issues in your project or product you're developing. So this briefly on BA skills and knowledge KPIs that you can employ for your BA team and measure them to understand where you are. Then we have stakeholder satisfaction. And here I would like to say that it's not only about how your stakeholder is satisfied with your company, delivery team, or BA, but it's more about how systematically you approach these measures and what you ask your client in order to get reliable feedback that you can act upon. And you cannot always rely only on feedback, because there is different rules and different culture communicates differently. So somebody might say, yeah, everything is fine, but it might mean completely different situation. And you need to employ those feedback with other measurements to understand that you're in the right place. So subjective opinion on BA skills of stakeholders, as I mentioned, then stakeholder satisfaction measurement, you can substitute with NPS, Net Promotion Score, so asking how likely you would recommend to work with this BA. Also, you can narrow down to some questions like, did the stakeholders understood the requirements? How would you evaluate communication skills, subject matter expertise of the given BA? Or how would you evaluate the completeness of the analysis? So if BA keeps getting back to the stakeholders with the same questions, it means something is off as well. Then we measure the meetings KPI. So was BA prepared for each meeting interview? How long it takes for the solution to be adopted. So sometimes you need to have like a long weeks of negotiation across organizations to make your solution viable to them and them applying it into their situation. How many issues escalated to consultation. So here by consultation is meant not like you going to somebody in client and asking the same question again and again. It's more like, okay, you did a bunch of techniques to verify your requirements, and the groups you selected and stakeholders you selected didn't come up with final decisions, so you need to escalate to higher levels. That's the number of issues escalated. So if escalations keep popping up, it means projects needs to do something about that. If there is no escalations, maybe you're doing a great job, maybe you need to understand why it's not happening. Then we also measure developers' feedback. So because developers are consuming those requirements or user stories or BRDs that business analysis develops, and we need to understand that they can act upon them and deliver, and they're not frustrated, because frustrated developers is the worst thing I think we usually can see. So to make them happy and understand if BA is satisfying their needs. Then project stakeholder satisfactions, that they're confident that business analysts can provide needed level of requirements, understand the roadmap, manage the client relationships, so those project side of the things that they are satisfied. And as well, QA requirement satisfaction. So after developers create the programs, they need to be tested, and test team usually relies heavily on requirements documents, and if they cannot act on those requirements, it means they cannot test, and there is a lot of probably ambiguity or some missing points. We also need to know this before we get to the problem. So as you see, stakeholder satisfaction is not about only asking one question, are you happy with BA, but there is different dimensions, and those dimensions are usually connected with other measures. So let's go to the next. This is quite straightforward. So communication and planning. So percentage of deviation from BA estimates, plan versus fact. So every new project you start as a BA manager or BA lead, your manager will come to you and say, okay, I need your estimate for BA phase for this given project. And BA usually will provide those estimates. And then we measure, so how much BA told that it will take him to develop requirements for this project and how much it actually took. And usually, sometimes it's less time if it's more experienced BA, sometimes it's more time if you have a more junior team available. And it also highlights, for example, scope creep, or BA found a new features or new scope not included in the original project. So you need to spend more time on BA estimates and on BA phase of this project. Also, I would like to put here a communication plan defined, but it's more like a common project start document, which should be managed by project management side rather than BA, but it can be also part of those KPIs. So the effectiveness of work of BA is how we can measure it. You can calculate the percentage of rework. I can spell it. So how much rework needed because we didn't put together right requirements in the right place. For example, team takes a user story that is estimated like for one sprint. They spent one sprint and understand that they need to spend another sprint or two on this user story. So it actually means that that user story either being discarded take more time, or the requirements for user story were not fleshed out to the very detail, and delivery team was not able to act as promised on them. Then we have a percentage of prioritized requirements to backlog depths. So how deeply BA understands his backlog and how much priorities are in there. It's not only BA, it can be also stakeholders or product managers that drive those priorities, and they may not be available in your situation, and you will have the low percentages. So again, you look on this KPI and then make a decision what you need to do, and not always blame the BAs. The higher percentage, the better, because if you have the full backlog prioritized, it means you flashed it out and probably your team knows what they need to do. So there is a really smooth transition of work from one stage to another. Percentage of requirements fully implemented. So it's really valuable in situations when you have a scope creep. So you have implemented your original scope, but you keep getting new requirements and your percentage is getting lower, lower, and lower. And you can say, okay, look, we have this KPI of requirements fully implemented. It keeps getting lower because of scope creep. What we should do about that? So it can be a great discussion opener. And percentage of approved requirements not implemented. So those requirements that client signed off, for example, or that product manager says that they're needed for your product, they're in backlog, they can be actionable, but they are not implemented yet by engineering team. It also may show your velocity speed of how fast you go through your requirements, and it can show some problems if this percentage is not changing over the time and it stays put, so it means there's some problem in the process. So this is on KPI on BA effectiveness. Then next measure is requirement management itself. Because BA is working with requirements a lot, so effectiveness and requirements management are somehow connected. So affected process by your solutions that were not changed, organizational standards not followed. For example, if you have a template for user story and some BAs decide not to use them, then we have standard not followed, and this is where we raise a flag. Or, for example, we have a standard that all projects start with a discovery. Some project didn't have a discovery. Now they have a problem in BAing. It also can be a red flag and KPI for us to understand that we had a problem. Has the BA managed to prioritize his requirements? Again, as I told you in effectiveness, prioritizing is really crucial to understand priorities. So, and if BA is not capable to do that, or there is no process around him, then it's signal to intervene. And percentage of requirements prioritized, back to efficiency slide. Then one of the KPI areas is the change management. As I think somebody on this call had passed UAT and acceptance phases during their career. So if you keep having high numbers of change requests in, for example, UAT phase or released features, it means there might be improvements in inception process of how we get new requirements and how we flesh them out. Probably you're developing some new product and it just keeps evolving as market evolves. So you may be in a situation when change request will come to you. And last item is a number of defects marked as a requirement spec. So it's really combination of the development team, QA and BA, to understand how it is better to write requirements in order not to receive those bugs. But in unlikely situation when this happens, it means that there is some breakage in this link and requirements are read differently by different team members, and that's why we get those requirements bugs. It's easier to solve, I would say it's cheaper to solve problems on requirements stage rather than when we release the feature to production and then we need to deal with those requirement bug or find a workaround or do some other releases which will involve everybody like in your engineering team to like all stages of delivery process in your project in order to fix those. So that's briefly on BI KPI areas and possible measurements. So you decided, okay, there is some great ideas. I would like to stop this for my team, and probably you've seen some items that you would like to apply them right away. If you have a good understanding how the mechanics of these KPIs are working, please go ahead and do that. But before applying those KPIs, have a good think through that it will show the right thing at the right time. So as stated on this slide, a good KPI helps to understand where you are, which way you're going, and how far you're from where you want to be. So set expectations for your team of BAs and determine metrics to track, assess, and report on the quality of business analysis. So don't blindly copy paste all the metrics I presented today. Select some of them that you believe will help you to understand your situation better and to act upon those KPIs. It can be 1 KPI, 2, 3. You don't need to employ everything. Or you can invent your own, so you can think a bit about those KPIs or KPI area you would like to measure. Also think about your delivery process, for example, somebody in waterfallish or somebody in agile process or in any other methodology you follow, and think about those KPIs that methodology dictates. Probably there's also space for that can be reused for business analysis. Agree on these expectations with your people, business analysis that you will be measuring, or with yourself. That, yes, it's viable. Then prepare those KPI scorecards, so KPI 1, KPI 2, KPI 3. define base values for yourself to understand, like, this is what I think is a good level of this KPI, and then show this scorecard to your stakeholders and peers with values and get their feedback if they think it's a good way to measure your process and the business analysis quality. Then collect that feedback and create a report. It can be a simple PowerPoint presentation or Confluence page, which you update on some regular basis, like monthly or bi-weekly or weekly. And then compare this input against BA performance metrics that you defined on step 1 when you decided what is the best process, best KPIs for you. And once you discover gaps between, why it is important to spend time on designing KPIs, because each project has their own specifics, and depending on KPIs you select, you can measure different situations. KPIs will help you to establish clear and reasonable expectation about your performance. They will help you identify opportunities for improvements and personal development. They will facilitate consistent and fair evaluation of the work done. And for some people who is more in administrative type of mind, will help make their work more interesting and meaningful by making contribution more visible. And if I was to, install a KPI scorecard for a new project or to come consult some other project, that's the KPIs I would select. So first of all, I will measure requirement cycle time from adoption to release. This is simple measures that you can get right away in Jira with some tweaking. Then I would ask the BA, has he managed or she to prioritize their requirement? Then I would investigate how many defects in requirements after development stage completed. So basically number of defects marked as the requirements bugs. If there is a lot of those, that it means that we need to improve on the requirements and investigate further. Then obviously I would get feedback from the clients, basically net promotion score from client delivery team and the project management team. And I would also ask if there is a BA phase estimation in place and what was the plan and what the actual values are. So this is briefly on BI, business analysis KPIs, and how you can employ them. You can invent your own, or you can, Google up, and there will be dozens of them. I believe this is the most essential ones that can help you to understand where you are in your process and how to propel further. The next slide will be for those who are interested in solving the puzzle. Thank you for your attention and spending a lot of time and waiting for this slide with me. Yeah, and thanks for attention. Let's go for Q&A session. And Tanya, it's your turn, I think.
Yes, thank you, Orest. That was like fantastic session, and thank you very much. So yeah, it's high time to our Q&A session. So yeah, to tell the truth, we have collected a lot of questions, and thanks audience that you have voted on questions. That's very nice. So and the first question, Orest, to your side. So taking into account that you have possessed the huge experience in IT, so actually it would be so easy question to your side. Could you please provide for us, like in a nutshell, in short, because we don't have rather so huge time. So practical case, when BA effectiveness measurement was applied and followed, and mostly what conclusions have been made regarding the results, and what changes regarding the business analysis work have been made as well. So.
It's really great question because I think everybody who is doing BA work knows that it's really tough to measure BA KPIs and BA output. However, there is distinct metrics that can be used. So in EPAM, in like 90%, the stakeholder evaluation would be present. So there is always constant stakeholder feedback on BA work and project feedback on BA work. And I would say every project is doing that. And once we receive some, direct feedback from clients on given BAs. We employ rigorous corrective actions to fix those problems, starting with trainings and ending with rotation if you need. And it also drives influence on our, how I would say, BA role description. So in case clients change their expectations from the BA, or we would like to include BA in some other areas, for example, technical BA or product ownership BA, and we also employ those changes in the BA role description. Like thinking about full-blown implementation of metrics, it's really tough to do that because our systems that we usually employ are limited into measuring that. As you know, 90% are Jira-based projects, and Jira can measure probably your backlog depth, backlog prioritization, and cycle time. Other than that, in case you have some sophisticated metrics like improvements in your requirements or changes in your requirements prior to development, it will require a lot of customizations to implement. I also know projects that are looking really, how I would say, projects with high pace that deliver constantly to production. They're looking on requirements, defects in prod, and those requirements, defect in production will also use as a metric to measure successfulness of BAs, especially in huge setups where it's not like 5 to 10 BAs working on this project. And then you use this metric to evaluate how good those BAs are working with the clients and how good they're working with the delivery team to bring those ideas to the delivery and to the final decision. I'm looking forward for more automated systems that have built-in capabilities for tracking BAs. However, we're really limited with the methodology we are in and tools we're using today.
Thank you. So, Orest, and if you are talking about the prioritization regarding the KPI, we have dozens of KPIs. So, what top priority? What makes BA great?
Well, as I said in my closing slide, let me look up it a little bit. So is that requirement cycle time from adoption to release. So it's a crucial, because if you're not releasing product if you're not releasing your requirements into working state, it means it's dormant or probably produced a lot of waste that is never will be used by anybody, and nobody likes that. Then have you managed to prioritize the requirements? So if so is your backlog prioritized and team can take the next steps? And the third one would be feedback from client delivery team and project management team. So these three, I believe, will help to understand like where you are with BA and how to improve.
Thank you. What tools do you use to make a KPI measurement? So actually, for example, Firebase or whatever, manual mathematic formulas, or just could you please share?
Yeah, I would say a simple Excel spreadsheet will suffice for the non-computational for those metrics that don't require a lot of effort to calculate. So you can just put in Excel rows of given KPI and just over the time put the values as they develop. Sometimes you may need to develop a scorecard, and that's where you need to employ another tools that will help you. For example, Jira that can. So once you start doing this with Excel, you will find out that you need to automate a process of gathering those KPIs, and then you start customizing your Jira or looking for other solutions. However, you're still limited with licenses that your clients or company provides, and you end up only with Jira or Excel or in some semi-automated way.
Have you ever done some kind of cost-benefit analysis for gathering the measurements compared to the benefit you get from having those KPIs set and assessed? If yes, please share your experience so that we can apply to it while requesting time allocation for this kind of activities. It is worth of gathering this kind from your experience.
Yeah, so as a business analysis manager, my problem that I'm trying to solve is that how to make sure that service we provide as a company, as BA manager, as BAs to our clients, are always consistent, and those people are doing the right job in the right place. So for myself, having KPIs for these BAs are really crucial, and understanding them is also very important to make the decisions on those people careers or how they should be developed and on their next steps. But if you're inside the project, which is, for example, time and material or agile, fully agile, let's say that way, nobody cares about those KPIs. So as long as you're doing your job, that's it. However, if you want to make some sophisticated commands, or you have some idea but you don't have supporting information for that idea, you can invest time into getting those KPIs, and those KPIs will help you to bring those ideas that you have to your stakeholders and to sell those ideas to the team around you. Yeah, so let me rephrase. So time allocation for defining KPIs for BAs. I think this should be done on the beginning of the project. It's the best time when you can sell this to your clients and project managers, saying, okay, we're setting up a project. Let's think about KPIs we can measure BA work. Or in situation when a project is struggling with BA process, and you say, let's spend some time on defining KPIs and then use them to guide our process and process improvements. If everybody is happy with the situation, there won't be much support for defining those KPIs and spending time on tracking them.
Okay, thank you. And being like representatives on EPAM and business analysis management, so actually pretty sure that you gather some KPI and in terms of business analysis lead at project and as a resource manager as well. Have you gathered and applied for example at project a current assignment and for your subordinates as resource manager as well?
It's a tough question. all questions are tough, actually. So thanks for audience is really well prepared. How would I gather? So it's not directly.
Probably you can divide into two parts. First of all, on being on behalf a PAM representative and as a role of a resource manager. So actually, this is like two different questions.
Yeah. So the RAM part of KPIs, they are more people focused rather than skill focused, and you will get. So I have sort of scorecard for each person I work with that I fill out and see how the person develops over the time. And there is only some, I would say, like BA skill development, or has person like learned their lessons and do not apply the same mistake twice. On the other side, if we are in a project, I would go through the backlog capacity. Has the person built the communications? Did we follow the meetings we have with the client? All these KPIs on efficiency that I mentioned before, that will work in project setup.
Thank you. Question as well. So in most KPI presented, it's not only BA responsibility, but product owner and team can affect a lot of, for example of rework, change requests, customer changes, opinions of how efficient in your experience to use them. They can show very different picture than in reality. So.
Yeah. So the KPIs, especially in Ukrainian understanding, is something that you either achieve or not, and if you don't achieve, it's very bad. Actually, the KPI is just indicator, so it's a key performance indicator. It doesn't say you're good or bad. It just says a given measure this is your value. So you shouldn't treat it as if it's less than reference value that it's bad, or if it's higher than reference value then it's very good. Basically, it will highlight you that given KPI in your situation is less than reference value, and it should let you open conversation on this KPI. Okay, we're seeing this KPI is less than we expect. What happened? What is the issue for this? Why we didn't achieve those KPIs? And what are the facts influencing those low numbers? Of course, sometimes you can end up with root cause analysis and seeing that BA is not pulling up the string and delivering what's need to be delivered. But also you can discover some issues on the client side or some issues with your delivery team where you need to intervene. I mean, project managers or some superiors need to intervene in situation in order to resolve them. And of course, software engineering is a team, I would say, team sport, right? And you have a lot of your teammates influencing you and you influencing them. And I wouldn't say that all of them are intertwined, but those that on feedbacks side of things are really, really connected to each other. Backlog related or efficiency related, they really depend on a BA person to, to lay out them and deliver. I think you can do them in solo mode without relying much on the team, but it's my opinion. I'm not sure. So experience may vary as you proceed with them.
Thank you, Orest. So actually, yes, we have here in EPAM so assessment committee sessions so question from Yulia, this very important and interesting question. Do your business analysts use this KPI for self-assessment? Are these ready to use pieces of advice for different levels of KPI? So those who is just working on self-improvement may just look into them.
Yes, so you can look on those KPIs and try to assess your situation and do self-assessment based on your numbers, so like how you think you should be doing and what you're achieving right now. They're ready to use pieces of advice. That's the main reason why I created this presentation, is to popularize those KPIs thinking for BAs and to draft some ideas what KPIs might be. If we wanted to implement KPIs in a given project, it would be a completely different presentation, which should outline how you communicate those KPIs, how you manage this change in your teams, how you sell it. Basically, the questions we have, how you sell those KPIs to everybody around. My goal was just to raise the awareness that KPIs do exist, and we can use them in our day-to-day job to make it more efficient and better as a BAs. And probably make from BA Magic transition from BA Magic to BA technology or BA measurable process, I would say.
Thank you. So, and probably vice versa question, from your experience, maybe you can share tips how to exclude impact of team, product owners, stakeholders from KPI tracking, business analysis, experience, working activities, performance. How to exclude impact, not to interfere.
So if you want to exclude impact, select individual KPIs that only you can achieve, right? So without being impacted by fellows. And that's where I was saying, if you think about some areas, you can come up with ideas for KPIs that you can do by yourself. For example, like how many stories defined, right? Or do user stories follow in West principle, or some others as well, where only BA skill is required. Or you can. The problem with KPIs is that they're really connected to the delivery process you follow and the standards you defined as your team. And you usually, especially for mature teams that defined a lot of processes they follow, like they have definition of done or definition of ready, they have transition statuses in Jira. It's really can be easier to identify those KPIs for yourself and see, here's my chunk, and this is probably 3 or 4 KPIs that will describe those chunk for given person.
Thank you, Orest. And one more question. So actually, Jakub actually mentioned about this, but probably I will combine 2 questions into one. So actually, you mentioned quite interesting approach to measure business analysis estimation against actual time required to complete. How does it work in iterative projects and agile and in waterfall, vice versa? BA is asked to provide total estimation for all iterations, if not known in hours.
I would say sometimes you can, so if you do the iterative development, you can depend, You can rely on capacity planning rather than making direct hours estimation by saying, okay, we have a next iteration coming for, I don't know, 100 units, right? And we think that 20 units will be devoted to BA work, and then you measure against that. So if you spend 20 units of BA work, you were right in your estimates. If you spend more units of work, you like overrun your estimate, and then once you enter the new iteration, you change your estimate. In my experience at EPAM, what we do when we sell the project, there is usually project estimate. Even if it's time and material, nobody cares about your deadlines. There's still a project estimation happening, and there is a BA phase estimate as well. So there will be overall project duration and then BA phase duration in those estimates. Even though when we kick off the project and things keep, so you have a document and you have a living project and things keep changing, and your estimates will also change. And having this metric will show you that we have this idea when we started the project, and now we have a new percentage, which is really different from what we think, and it means that there is a lot of change happening. And then looking on this KPI, you open the discussion why we have those BA phase estimates changed and what happened, and then you have a full story about the situation. Yeah. Rather than saying, oh, we are not making it, we need to extend our deadline by another 2 weeks, so and nobody is happy. But you can say, okay, we have estimated our BA phase this long, and now it takes longer. What we should do about that? And then client says, let's estimate, let's add two more weeks, or let's cut some functionality, or I don't know, let's close this project. It depends on the client.
Yeah, that's a negotiable question. Yeah, that
but it makes you more prepared to those discussions rather than bringing bad news saying we are not making it in time. You say our percentage of plan versus fact is changing. So what we should do about that?
Mm-hmm. And probably some question from mathematics. What ratio is OK when you are to eliminate number of changes questions from your stakeholders to your documentation? Just like precise question and answer.
Yeah, I think that depends on the process you run. You can, for example, taxate. So each change will require some small fee to be applied, and then client will think, okay, do I need to do that change, or I'm okay with that? Or if you're in active development, when you're verifying and constantly reviewing and changing your requirements document with different stakeholders, you may ask for help from technical writer. For example, when tech writer comes in, they usually are equipped with the tools to track changes and track people that do those changes and feed this nicely into one document. And I usually advocate for employing tech writers in such situation because they really make a difference in between something lost and forgotten and very well put document with all outlines without any major glitches.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Orest. So, and one question from Yana: what is the best way to sell the need of KPI to management? Do you think it's worth to selling this such kind of needs, sort of kind? So, if you are like having a head of business analysis and working at current project and as business analysis manager on the other hand.
Yeah. Well, if I had somebody from my subordinates coming to me and saying, I would like to employ BA KPIs in my project, I would say, yes, you need to do that. I fully support, please do that. But if you're in generic situation when you're thinking about those KPIs and implementing them, be careful in order to not to propose something that will backfire on you. So select those metrics that you can achieve and you can justify in any given situation. Sometimes management is open to that because they are looking for solutions to measure like what's happening, and sometimes they're not because it's a waste of time and you need to deliver and there is no need for KPIs because you're like, I don't know, team of 5 and everybody sees everybody and they understand what's happening.
So, okay, probably we ran out of questions from my side. I would like to say to your side, Orest, and to our audience. So, to me, myself, so actually, thanks to your presentation, thanks to your topic that you have highlighted during this session, actually, I have an idea how to equip with my KPIs for my business analysis activities. So actually, I will not be like a little bit frustrated when manager asked me to provide, to like to show him such kind of sort of KPI, because you are actually put in one place, and thanks to your structurized knowledge, and thank you very much. So, and to audience, thank you very much for joining and for taking time with us. If you would like to continue discussion with our speaker, with our Orest, with our business analysis manager, please keep doing it. So actually link to the discussion group can be found on the session, in the session description, in agenda, if I'm so, and have a nice working day, and thank you all. So, and Orest, one more point. What is the best question? So actually, that
So the person that was the first question that you asked me. Let me tell you the name. Sorry, Sergey Matskevich, if I read it right. Practical so it's really piece. Practical piece, and well, it's the essence of this talk, that it's really somebody is doing that, but it's not in widespread practice across BAs in different companies, and we need to keep pushing that. And it's not only customer feedback that you rely on. It's much more, and we need to enlarge this much more topics. So thank you.
Thank you. Session will be recorded and presentation also attached on platform. Thank you very much. Thank you to all. Have a nice day to all. Thank you.